Gurumurthy's latest book. It's called Random Thoughts 2021 Emerging Paradigm Shift in the Changing Global Political and Economic Order. Uh, it's called 2021 because a smaller version earlier was also written a year ago, which we also published as a part of our annual report. And I think Gurumurthy raised some very fundamental and seminal issues in that article. And then he decided to expand it to a book, which is now, I think, almost 300 pages, and we have just brought it out. It is also available on in the e-form on our website and can be downloaded. I think the link was probably circulated also by Anutama. So you would have probably seen the book. Now, the reason why we organized this discussion is not just to really introduce Shri Gurumurthy's book, but really request Mr. Gurumurthy to talk about the emerging paradigm shift that is taking place in the world in the context of, in a deeper context of the rise of civilizational state, the rise of China and how the West facilitated it, the crisis in multilateralism, the crisis in the Western civilization itself, the rise of multiple modernities that Shri Gurumurthy talks about in the book, the importance of religion, culture, and civilization in geopolitics today, the background to the rise of fundamentalism, the debate over these Abrahamic religions and Indic faiths. And there's a whole lot of issues that Gurumurthy has discussed in this book, touched upon this book. And it is absolutely an original contribution, very original. Most of what we read in this book is not really discussed. I mean, I'm talking of the particularly the background to the events. And I think this is the reason why we thought that today, when the world is undergoing major shifts, particularly shifts which have now been accelerated by the pandemic, it is necessary for us to, in India, to understand the true depth of these changes. Because an accurate assessment of the changes that are taking place is absolutely vital for us to also delineate our own path, our own trajectory in the future. Of course, there can be a lot of debate on these issues, and there are many ideas which are floating around, and a healthy debate is always welcome. And I think the Gurumurthy's book certainly facilitates that debate. So this is the reason why we thought in the VIF we have been looking at civilization and culture and also the meaning of the rise of India. And I think Gurumurthy would perhaps today dwell upon these issues and explain to us and share his views on this. Of course, Gurumurthy is well known to this audience, but there are some younger people as well today who are joining us. He is the chairman of the board of trustees of the Vivekananda International Foundation, one of the founders of the VIF. He is currently the independent director in the RBI board. But apart from that, he's known for his investigative journalism, his contribution to the unearthing of the Bofors scandal many years ago. He's also the editor of the Tamil weekly, influential Tamil weekly Tuglak. He is a chartered accountant by profession, also a legal advisor to many corporates. He has played a major role in settling disputes amongst corporates. He is an academician. He frequently lectures in several institutions. He is associated with IIT Bombay. He's on their visiting faculty. He has deep knowledge about economics and politics of the country. And what he says and writes also, I think, is taken note by the government, particularly the intellectual ideas in the intellectual realm that he has contributed. I think also frames many of the government's policies. India today has regularly rated him as one of the most influential persons in the country. So, I mean, there are many parts to Mr. Gurumurthy's personality, but I've just narrated a few. So, with those, I again welcome you all, and now I request Shri Gurumurthy to kindly take the floor.
Thank you, Arvindji, for a very generous introduction of me. I am very glad that I got an opportunity to share my thoughts with an audience, which is not easy to gather, and it only because Vivekananda International Foundation has been working for the last decade and more that you have been able to assemble this audience. An audience is as much encouraging as it is challenging. And the subject which I have been asked to speak on is a very vast, silo-free, comprehensive, integrated, and touching almost every aspect of human life, political, geopolitical, economic, cultural, civilization. So the random thoughts which I thought of writing last year has now expanded into a very major work. I never thought when I started this, it would be such a major kind of product. But what encouraged me to do it is the fact that this institution is intended for that kind of enterprise. In fact, being part of the founding team of the Vivekananda International Foundation, I thought before I deal with the book, I will relate the book to the purpose of the VIF itself. A brief look at the evolution of the VIF is critical to understand why and what this large book is necessary at this point in time. It's not that everything in this will be accepted, but as Arvindji said, that this could be the starting point of a debate. After all, our entire civilization has lasted for 5,000 years and more without any violence, without a bloodshed of the kind which the rest of the world has seen, only because of the virtue of debate. In fact, Tarka Shastra, which is the very core of the Indian culture, religion, in fact, the very core of our life, is the one which has prevented bloodshed in India. Professor R.J. Ramal, who studied for 30 years mass killings of human beings by human beings all over the world for 2,500 years, he found that till the 13th century, there was no bloodshed or mass killing of any kind in India, except Ashoka's Kalinga War. But he didn't say why this exception. When in the whole world, 680 million people at the minimum and 1.2 billion people at the maximum had been massacred by fellow human beings. Why this phenomenon is absent in India? He didn't go into it, but the only way you could explain it is the virtue of debate, which produced the other virtue, tolerance. In fact, you even accept the opposite view. In fact, one of the principles of Tarkashastra is that you study the other person's view and then only argue. And if you can't convince the other person and he can't convince you, both of you agree to disagree is one formulation. It is not that you impose your views on the other man or he imposes the view. So this 300 pages of very intricate subject, 9 different subjects, which I have tried to formulate as chapters, has been written with this spirit that it should promote a debate and a dialogue. See, Vivekananda International Foundation was started with the forethought that civilizational paradigm will one day emerge in the world. It's a very, very important thing. The name Vivekananda is not a proper name in Vivekananda International Foundation. It's an adjective. It indicated the character of the organization. So Swami Vivekananda stood for certain things. In fact, as I will tell at some point in the course of my lecture, in 1994, the Harvard University started the Religious Pluralism Project and recalled Swami Vivekananda in 1993 as the one man who expounded the idea of taking the best from all religions and having a universally harmonious approach to all religions. They recalled it, and they recorded a journalist who was there and who said how Swami Vivekananda took over the entire discourse. On this platform, the platform is that there could be harmony among religions. So Vivekananda International Foundation has taken that quality of harmony among diversity. In fact, this is the word that we are using. You will not be able to achieve unity, but you can achieve harmony. So the founder director Doval's vision, Ajit Doval's vision, and I had the fortune of being associated with him when he built up this institution, was entirely in tune with the civilizational exposition that is needed for the world. Even though a man from the strategic community dealing with the raw matters of day-to-day security, law and order, he believed that ultimate solution is finding our civilizational identity and learning to live with different civilizations, which is actually the whole life teaching that this country has expounded throughout. So VIF is not just a think tank, but a movement to lead India into the civilizational paradigm of the world. And you could not prepone it, but in my view, the occasion has come. I try and explain how a civilizational paradigm is emerging in the world. And it is to lead that civilizational thrust that Vivekananda International Foundation was established, and the time for that enterprise has come. It is not founded, funded, or powered from outside. This is the most important aspect of Vivekananda International Foundation. VIF impliedly rejected all kinds of foreign influence by saying, putting one sentence in its trust deed, it will not affect foreign funds. If you don't accept foreign funds, you don't accept anything of foreign, and you grow domestic ideas, you only deal with them as friends. You don't deal with them as donors, as influencers. So this was a well thought out model to think for Indian civilization and to expound it to the world, uncolored by any deficit in thinking which we see in Indian intellectualism. So it does not depend on any single source of funds. its uniqueness manifests in its working, and all of us feel. Anyone who has worked in Vivekananda International Foundation, as many of you have been, you would have felt this freedom, the freedom of how we can think as Indians for India and for the world. So, when it is in this background that year after year, as chairman, I have been trying to expound the civilizational underpinnings of India and of the world. And I found the developments post the pandemic offered the scope for India to play a larger role in the sense of being an idea giver to the world. India has been a great idea importer, and it has been a free import of ideas from the rest of the world. And I wouldn't say it has been all wrong, but there are many wrongs which we have to overcome by generating an indigenous model of thinking, and particularly in the geopolitical and strategic community, diplomatic community, among intellectuals, among academicians, among bureaucrats. This thinking is very necessary, and that is what is the purpose of Vivekananda International Foundation, which is subserved by the current enterprise, the Random Thoughts. Random Thoughts is an attempt to understand the huge global debate that there is going to be a change in the world order, such a manner that the world will change forever. This is the statement of Henry Kissinger, who could perhaps be credited with making the post-Cold War world order. In fact, I just looked at the Foreign Policy magazine March 2020 issue, in which 12 great thinkers, of course, great thinkers mean only American thinkers, no one else, how they have perceived the change that is going to come. I'm just quickly reading out. Berlin Wall collapse like change will take place. World less open and less prosperous. End of globalization as we see it. A more China-centric world. More nationalism, greater power rivalry, and strategic decoupling. Multi-country power supply chain is over. US cannot protect its security alone. Dramatic fundamental change in the global capitalism. Failed state syndrome. US no longer seen as the world leader. These are all some of the well considered opinion of people who are very keen watchers from the Western perspective. So when they say they are the people who authored, who constructed, who expounded, and I won't say imposed, we influence the world into their order. It is they who are saying that there is going to be a monumental change. So we have to understand what the change that they are implying. And I don't see much debate in India. Very unfortunately, 1/6 of humanity, which is increasingly playing an influential role in the world, is not debating this. The kind of changes which are being talked about in the world, in that part of the world, which has been influencing the world for the last seven decades. So the Random Thought is an attempt at an Indian response to the near unanimous view that the world is going to change forever. If the world is going to change forever, 1/6 of humanity cannot remain isolated and refuse to change. Nor can it change in the manner in which the others ask it to change. It must have its own idea of how it should change. It must also have its own idea of how the world should change, because it is 1/6 of humanity. And it is not one of those pushovers today, and we are something today. And so this, that we should not merely be consumers of thoughts from outside, that we should contribute to thoughts from outside, is the principal driver of this. What are the questions before India? Is India going to be merely a spectator, or is it going to be a player in the 20s and onwards. Is India going to become a spectator like it was in the post-World War order building, or in the post-Cold War order making? That is the question before us. Are we going to be such passive subjects that we will import whatever is given from outside and then begin teaching in our educational institutions, universities, think tanks, official policy documents that this is what we have to do? Or we can do something. So the important aspect is there is a shift which the Indians have not fully grasped, the world has done, that India has shifted from the Kalinga War syndrome to the Kurukshetra War syndrome in 1998 itself. That is not fully internalized in India. What is Kurukshetra War syndrome and what is the Kalinga syndrome? It is important from geostrategic point of view. In the strategic community, I think this thought has to be very deeply ingrained. In the Kalinga War syndrome, Ashoka came to the conclusion that war is wrong and we should avoid wars. And this influenced independent India. I don't want to go deep into it. All of you know pretty well. But how we even thought having an army was wrong. So that kind of passivity was a product of Ashoka's Kalinga War. But Ashoka himself was a victor. You must understand, he defeated Ashoka, would never have given up the war. And if a defeated Ashoka had given up the war, then he would not be celebrated. But go to the Kurukshetra syndrome. In Kurukshetra war, whatever Ashoka said and cried after the war, Arjuna said and cried. And it was Krishna who removed his confusion and made him won the war. This is important. In the 63rd sloka, in the 18th chapter, Krishna tells Arjuna, I have taught you the secret of secrets. I am not giving you the Sanskrit sloka, I am giving you the meaning. I have taught you the secret of secrets. It is now up to you to see whether you want to fight or not. He could well have told him, he said, come on, tell me, Arjuna, Krishna, what I should do. Krishna was a psychiatrist. He knew unless Arjuna was going to won the war, he will not fight the war. So the entire Gita was a preparation that Arjuna must not only be prepared for the war, he must won the war himself. So after 1998 Pokhran bomb blast, India overcame that Kalinga War syndrome and got into the Kurukshetra War syndrome, that you have got to be prepared for a rough world. This is a very important aspect on which the entire discourse after 1998 came. I still remember President Clinton saying, oh, the India of Gandhi and Ashoka has done this. We were always India of Gandhi and Ashoka. What credit you gave to us? It is only after we exploded the Pokhran atom bomb you began bestowing attention on us. So it's a world of power, and we have begun playing the role of a powerful nation. So in this perspective, I decided to write this, but this is not my work alone. At every point, every sent to members of the team are here, and it is they who approved it. They suggested. Their suggestions were carried into effect. So even though I centrally authored it, it is not my individual product. It is the collective thinking of the VIF as a whole. So it is a team effort. So it is not an easy to read document, certainly not an academic exercise. It calls for very critical analysis, and it has multi-dimensional foundations. It almost integrates 6 months of work, research, and some 30-40 years of observation and experience. This is the background. So it is a consensual position of the VIF, and we divided into 9 chapters. And I would not be able to deal with all of them, but I would mention the names of the chapters which will be very interesting. The first chapter is the longest chapter, which I consider is the most important chapter. That is going to be the U-turn. That is describing the U-turn of the world. It is not just what India would like to do, but what the world is doing is what is described from the age of enlightenment to the age of China challenge. Abstract ideas are emerging as concrete. What used to be regarded as abstract those days, 100 years back, 50 years back, 25 years back, are now emerging as very concrete ideas. And I have tried to give a helicopter view of the world today and its future look in terms of what is happening in different parts of the world. Afghanistan is a separate chapter. The re-emergence of Taliban as an ominous development to the whole world. Then the global developments in 2021 in the background of Random Thoughts 2020. We did an exercise. We were trying to understand how the world would move in 2021 in our Random Thoughts in 2020. And we found in several areas the world seems to have moved in the way in which we thought it would move. So I thought we should record it, so that we are not seen to be merely academic thinkers, but we are very clearly watching what is happening on the ground, so that what we thought would happen also happened. That's important. So we thought we would include it as chapter. Another important chapter is the Indian picture, economic, internal security, border issues with China and Pakistan access. The next two are India's strategic engagements with the different countries. And there is a special chapter on India's strategic engagement with America. And what are all the caveats which both America and India would need to look at if this strategic engagement, which is regarded as something important by both the countries and also by the world, is to mature into something which will produce results. And after the first chapter, what I will consider as the most important chapter is the explosive revelations of fraud in the ease of doing business ranking by the World Bank, where the World Bank forensic audit admitted that China bribed the World Bank officials to give a higher rank for its ease of doing business, and any country who gave bribe was given a higher ranking. This should have provoked us into thinking, if World Bank index rating can be bribed, what about these small NGOs giving these rankings? And I was amazed to find that chapter is a very revealing chapter, because this is based on my own skills of investigation. And I found there are 74 rankings given by some different NGOs for all the countries in the world. And general and political rankings are 36. Economic rankings are 10. Environmental rankings are 8. Educational rankings are 10. 74 ratings are given, on the basis of which a country is debranded, abused, and praised. And I will tell you, if this is what the World Bank did, I will tell you, a beautiful investigation was made by our Shri, who is one of our VIF faculty, that his exposure was that there is one RSF, a French NGO, which said India is 142 in democracy ranking, as low as 142. Norway as the starting point. Why I am mentioning this is, if we are a strategic thinking group, if we are thinking of how to understand India in relation to the world and world in relation to India, we have to understand these strategies as to how they put down a country, improve a country, discard a country, destroy a country. And I'm going to tell you what Surya Prakash had brought out. India is 142. Have you heard of any country by name Burkina? Burkina is 36 in the ranking. And the State Department of United States identified it as a country of human trafficking. And 82,000 people are supposed to be living under modern slavery. And this country is 36 and India is 142. Now let us go. Maldives. It says only Islam can be the ruling religion. That is 79. Then look at Oman, which says only Muslims can be there, only Muslims can be president. 135. Then Islamic Comoros, 75. Only Islam is ruling religion, only Muslims can rule the country. And Argentina, only a Roman Catholic, it is a Roman Catholic country, declared state religion, 64. And Malta, another Roman Catholic country, 81. Most important, Norway, which says only a Christian can be the head of the state, the king, and he should not be questioned. Number one country in the world. And Denmark, Greece, all are declared Christian countries where Bible will rule. Should we not trash this? So I found that the depth of the thinking that is needed to protect the larger identity, image, and the personality of India, that is not taking place in this country. We will import what is taking place, what is written in some Time magazine that India is destroying the Parda in India, and so Indian freedom is lost, and that becomes the headlines in our newspapers. See the kind of intellectualism against which we have to work. Now coming to the most important chapter, the first chapter, which is very near to, which is close to the heart of Vivekananda International Foundation, is based on the current happenings from an abstract idea like civilization to concrete ideas like the shift in the global supply chains. It's not something which is unrelated. The shift in the supply chains is also taking place because of huge civilizational shifts that is taking place in the world. Everything began happening because everything was kept sealed underground. As we used to think in the Vivekananda International Foundation, that civilizational power is a hidden power, underground power. And you may paper over it by many contemporary things, but one day it is bound to explode. And that is what happened with the COVID coming. And the most important thing is the underground civilization China is now the official China. Confucian China, communist China has become the Confucian China. And I will read out to you what Xi Jinping spoke on the occasion of the centenary of the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party. Communists have nothing to do with history. They have nothing to do with the past. They have nothing to do with the culture. They think if you have moved away from day before yesterday, you cannot look back. You have to only look to the future. See what that communist leader spoke. Xi Jinping recalled the greatness of China's ancient history, saying, historical and cultural heritage not only vividly tells us the past, but also profoundly affects the present and future. It belongs not only to us, but also to future generations. Having gone through 5 years of vicissitudes, the Chinese civilization has always kept up to its original roots as a symbol of Chinese nation's unique spirit. This provides the nation with abundant nourishment to grow and to prosper. China is effectively, by declaration, by conviction, by an agenda, shifting to civilizational paradigm. Just in 1974, they they wanted to destroy everything relating to the past. They maimed Confucius. They destroyed Buddhism. Now they are reviving the whole thing and say this is the way to future. This is not an ordinary development. This is something on which we have to work on. So, how it happened in China? How it happened? It is because the West called its past dark. No country calls its past dark. It may have some disagreement with it, problem with it. It may even feel shy about some aspects of it. But no country calls its past dark. The West called its past dark. I said, we don't want to look at it because you had had such bad past. They can't defend it. So they began saying, your past is also dark. They said, how can, when our past is dark, how can your past be great? We were confused because we had Ashoka in 2500 years back. Ashoka wrote in his rock edicts the principles of his rule, which surpass the modern thought about human civilization, humans living together, human harmony, toleration, acceptance of each other's views. 2500 years back. Why should we call our past as dark? But we accepted it. They said this Oriental despotism. The entire Oriental despotism theory on which Karl Marx founded his theory of Asiatic modes of production and discounted India and called India backward and semi-barbaric, that has been completely proved to be wrong. And now there is no greater evidence needed than the Encyclopedia Britannica declaring that the Oriental despotism theory is no more valid. This is not how we understand our civilization. So I thought that all this must come. And whenever we talk about civilization, we thought it is a suspended one. India, there is a continuity. Encyclopedia Britannica again says, everybody tried to link the Indus Valley civilization to the Babylonian and Egyptian civilization, but we have found now that this is an autogenous growth. It has no mix-up with anybody. And its cells are reflected even today in the Indian way of life. If there is any civilization which had 5,000 years of continuity with symbols prevailing then, active today, it is in Indian civilization. This is what the Encyclopedia Britannica says. These are all supposed to be masterful documents produced by multidisciplinary team. So, civilization, which is something to be discarded, to be forgotten, this is what the left liberal thinkers began telling and confused our mind. But Xi Jinping, who is a very product of this surviving left, if it is called left, is saying it's 5,000 years glorious China that is going to guide the future also. So there is a new model of thinking that is evolving, and unfortunately in the West, Huntington was a very poor representative of the idea of civilization. He spoke about civilizational clashes because they had no idea that civilizations could live in harmony. They had only seen civilizational clashes. So that is where I told you Harvard University's Pluralism project looks to Swami Vivekananda's way of religious and civilizational, cultural, social harmony. Because there is no such thought, there is no such model, there is no such literature, there is no such philosophy other than in India. 1893, what happened? They are recalling in 1994. So, there is a huge shift that is taking place in the world. And over and above that, we were all told and we believed and we taught and we wrote and we believe even now is West is the single source of modernity. This was the theory. But it has been completely demolished. Sebastian Conrad, who is the head of the chair of civilizational studies he has come out with, of course he has written several books, but his latest book is a devastating disapproval of this, and he says that the West as the single source of modernity is gone. Modernity is the autogenous developmental process, evolution of each society. There are multiple modernities. This is how he speaks. This just a para I will read out. This I have dealt with in page 17, where admitting that Enlightenment's global impact was not energized solely by the ideas of Parisian philosophies, Conrad says, rather it was the work of historical actors around the world, in places such as Cairo, Calcutta, and Shanghai, who in the term, and they saw it almost saw as its almost important claims for their own specific purposes. Every society had an enlightenment process which led to the idea of modernity. The challenge of the rest extended from Egypt to India to China to Korea. But this is not what we debate or discuss. So the world is moving in a direction and India is still got suspended. And this is where I think we need to exert. And this document is an attempt to provoke that debate which is needed in India so that it can be promoted outside India. So this is an important aspect. And Conrad goes to many people think civilization, culture, all these are backward. Conrad says very clearly, enlightenment and civilization are not opposites, but they are interchangeable. Because human beings always strive to improve. Unless you stop them from improving. Communism stopped them from improving. Otherwise, they would have improved. So, evolution was stopped by revolution. Normal human evolution would have led human being to a higher level of understanding by sheer experience. But that was stopped because one man said, this is not wrong. The whole thing has to be forgotten. I am showing you the new way, and that is revolution. And that stunted the growth of China till Deng Xiaoping came and said that we have got to unlearn from the past. And now you see in Jiang Zeming's period, the unlearning process ages out of the ruins of the communist work. So the multiple modernity theory also challenges the one-size-fit-all model social and economic theories. And I have dealt with it in the course of my lecture in the past, that how in 1951, the United Nations actually mandated that the world will grow only if it rejected the past. It will develop only if we reject the past. And that became the development mantra, one size fit all model, social and economic structure. It was taught in universities and it was accepted by our planners, but that was demolished in 2005 when the G20 nations leaders met and said this one size fit all model won't work. In 2008, the World Bank accepted it. In 2010, the United Nations accepted it. That culture and civilizational dimensions are very important to plan developmental growth. But none of this is found in the internal debate and discussions in India. So, this another aspect which is important, which I have tried to capture, is that the lack of civilizational or evolutionary approach has made the West a victim of short-termism. Short-termism is, I mean, you take in business, because I advise business people, I know how short-termism is destroying business. You used to have annual balance sheets. Then you had half-yearly balance sheets. Then you had quarterly balance sheets. Now you have overnight interest rates. That is deciding the whole perspective of business. The finance ministers, the Reserve Bank, the leaders of countries, if they are worried about overnight interest rates, how are you going to prepare the country for the next generation? This has been in 2008, the entire crisis. I have documented all this. I don't want to burden you. That the entire 2008 crisis is a product of short-termism. That is what China avoided. China could avoid it because the combination of liberal democracy and market capitalism produced short-termism both in politics and in economics in the West. That they avoided, China, because it was an autocratic country. It need not have to answer the day-to-day things of the people. And it could plan. That is why they had this hide and bide policy for 30 years. No democracy would have been able to do it. So the long-term implications of China's rise, which was not understood by America, because America was more interested in market and profit. It was not interested even in itself, much in the affairs of the world. I had dealt with the last part of my random thoughts, how America produced its own Basmasura. And when I went through the whole 30 years process, I was stunned that no country would foolishly raise another country as its main opponent. And it had no indication of being a friendly power. It was always a hostile power. And you were feeding it. So I found that this imbalance which America created for itself and for the world, geopolitically, economically, and in terms of production capacities, in terms of wealth building, and in terms of conquering countries through money power, is a product of the last 30 years of imbecile American policy making, which I have brought out in the last chapter. So short-termism of liberal democracies and market capitalism and long-termism of autocracy and Marxian market has produced this very difficult period. In page 24, I have dealt with a very important article by the managing editor of the BBC. Short-termism is a civilizational peril in the West. In a short but instructive article in BBC Online, 10/1/2019, all this is coming after the crisis began taking over. On the perils of short-termism, Richard Fisher, managing editor of the BBC, says that modern society is suffering from temporal exhaustion and brings out the perils of short-termism for a people and their civilization. Writing in 1975, sociologist Elise Boulding once said, if one is mentally out of breath all the time dealing with the present, there is no energy left in imagining for the future. Unquote. We can only guess a reaction to the relentless Twitter-fueled politics of 2019. No wonder. And it goes on to say, what these thinkers from myriad fields share is a simple idea, that longevity of a civilization depends on our extending time frame in our frame of reference in time, considering the world and our descendant through a much longer lens. What if we would be altruistic enough to care about people whom we may never live to see? And if so, what will take the breath out of our short-termist ways? Even then, they could not get into the core of the problem. Bob Swartz, an American economist of the Brookings Institution, brought it out beautifully. Your short-term civilizational values bring about short-term economic behavior. And he compares how the short-term civilizational approach of the West, where they do not even think about the children and grandchildren, brings about a shift in the lifestyle which prevents them from saving and spending for themselves. And that has become the disease, that has become the model, that is being exported, and that is being urged here. The people must spend. How much they should spend, how much they should save. On this, there is absolutely no debate. What Bob Sworth says. Bob Sworth says, he compares civilization of America and Asia. And America might think in saving their own retirement, but an Asian resource in terms of saving for family for multiple generations in future. This shows the paradigm difference. A civilizational paradigm operating in countries where each are different from individualist paradigm. I read an article by the former President of India about civic nationalism. I'm really surprised the man neither read Gandhi nor read Jawaharlal Nehru. Civic nationalism is possible only in those countries where you wipe out the original population, like America, Canada, and Australia. So you write the nation's constitution on a new slate. No other country could afford it. Only these three countries did it, civically. In all other countries, there is a burden of the past. How you deal with it is different. But you don't wipe out the past, the memories, the behavior, the continuity. And we talk about, and our media, of course, our media to which I belong, has the least amount of time for thinking. They only quote, they don't think. With the results, how much confusion comes to our mind that you can be like, if you wipe out 200 million people, you can be like America. Now Canada is unearthing hundreds and hundreds of the people who have been buried and killed, because they were the ones who owned that land. Now you are writing a new constitution, and the Canadian Prime Minister says, my body belongs to myself. I can do whatever I can do with that body. Is liberalism. I mean, can you believe this kind of thought leaders? I can understand it is good for them because they have a vast land and smaller population, having wiped out the earlier population. They can do whatever they want to do with their land and their body. But you can't export those ideas to a country which has 17% of world's population and 2% of world's land area. So there are perils of modern thought which discounts the civilizational underpinnings, which is a civilizational behavioral continuity. So liberalism itself has become an ideology today. If somebody is illiberal, he is to be hounded out. You are supposed to be liberal. You are supposed to tolerate even illiberal ideas. So one Zorawar Singh has written a beautiful essay on how liberalism of America is the most illiberal idea. I have quoted it. It's a very good article, very good paper in which he has brought out the civilizational dimensions of Indian democracy. Indian democracy is basically civilization. It is not an individualist vote-based democracy. In fact, there is a comparison of the voting pattern that has emerged in the last 70 years between countries which are practicing liberal democracies and India. And Yogendra Yadav was one of the persons who has brought out this in 2009, a beautiful research which shows how the bottom spread people of India vote more. It is the minorities who vote 75%. It is the scheduled caste who vote 65%. It is the OBCs who vote 62%. It is the forward caste who vote 49%. It is the educated people who vote less. It is the illiterate people who vote more. In India, this is his research. But if you see the idea research in the West, only educated people vote, only people with high income vote, people with low income vote less. And in liberal democracies, youths have stopped voting because they are given so much freedom. They don't think it is necessary even to go to for the polling booth. Only 45% of the youths vote. Only 35% of them want to participate in public life. So this is regarded as, by Freedom House, this is regarded as a sign that in Central and Eastern Europe, there may be no democracy in the next 25 years. This they call as backsliding. But in India, you see, increasingly people vote. We started at 47% voting in 1950. The last election, we topped 67%. But this democracy is not recognized by them. This is not a liberal democracy. Because this is not a democracy in which people are allowed to do whatever they want to do with their body. There is still some restriction, some morality, some value system, some culture, some social injunctions, and some family values. You destroy all this, then you become a liberal democracy. I mean, where to debate all this? So I think it could not be discussed in silos. It has a sum total effect. While liberal democracies are trying to catch India's hands in G7, 4 years before you were abusing us as illiberal democracy. Today you are holding India's hand and say we are a 2.2 billion democracy in the world. All the democracies put together with some kind of voting is only 46% of the world's population. 54% of the world's population live under autocracies. In this, liberal democracies constitute just 13%. India added, it becomes 30%. India is needed by them. But we have to become a liberal democracy. There will be no country if you become a liberal democracy. Because the parents will not take care of the children. Children will not take care of their parents. There will be such rampant and unbridled individualism. The state will have to take care, as it is doing in America. Can the state take care of 60 to 70 crore people of India? For everybody to be individualistic like in America? Do we integrate this political idea into economic issues? Can we have universal social security? Universal health security? Such integrated subjects. Because life is integrated. We are not integrated only by environment. So it's a very major issue. So I thought that we should put this in the public domain as much as possible. It is not that we will be able to take over the discourse, but we should introduce this seminal seed idea in an important segment. And this disease is rampant in Delhi. It's not so much in other parts of India. I travel all over the country. There is a special atmosphere in Delhi. And it's fortunate that Vivekananda International Foundation is situated in Delhi. So I thought that it was worth the trouble, and it didn't happen just like that. It took 10 to 14 hours of work a day for 6 months. But it was worth it. So I thought of putting this and see that it gains some traction. And I'm happy that you all listened to me for an hour. And I'll be happy if you have something to tell me, criticize me. Even if you pillory me, I am happy about it. But I would like this issue to be thought about. Thank you.
Thank you, Gurumurthy ji, for that very thought-provoking talk in which you have dwelt upon the civilizational attributes of India and also looked at the crisis which the Western civilization itself is facing. I think in the book there are many ideas which are very interesting, and which actually give us a framework for thinking about India as it begins to rise. I'll open this now for